The film opens in Lithuania, with a young girl starting to paint portraits. The story then moves to Imperial, Nebraska, where Todd Burpo installs garage doors for a warehouse. In addition to this job, Todd is a high school wrestling coach, volunteer firefighter, and pastor of a local Wesleyan church. He is currently on medical leave from church after breaking his leg during a softball game and suffering from multiple kidney stones. Despite their financial burden, Todd's wife Sonia insists on taking a family trip to Denver with their children Cassie and Colton. In Denver, they visit a butterfly and spider sanctuary, where Cassie is holding a tarantula, but Colton is too scared. On the way home, Cassie and Colton become sick. A few days later, Cassie recovered, but Colton's fever continued to rise. They take him to the hospital, where doctors tell Todd and Sonia that Colton's appendix has ruptured and needs emergency surgery. They also tell the Burpos to prepare for the worst. While Colton is on the operating table, Sonia calls some friends to ask for prayers while Todd is in the hospital chapel. Todd cries out to God for testing his faith by putting him through a lot of suffering and accepting it, but trying to take his son is going too far. Then, after what the doctors describe as a miracle, Colton survives the surgery and eventually makes a full recovery. Colton tells his dad that he's not afraid of anything anymore and he to hold that spider, so Todd and Colton go back to Denver just to do it. Later, they are at a playground and Todd asks Colton what changed his mind about the spider. This is where Colton first reveals that he went to heaven and met Jesus. Colton says that he left his body during the surgery, saw his parents in 2 different rooms, then he went to the church. He went inside and saw the entrance to heaven. Then Jesus came to Colton and they entered heaven to see the sights and sounds of angels singing. Todd is stunned by what he hears and, when they return home, he tells Sonia what he said. They go to Colton and ask him if he is sure that it was heaven and Jesus he saw. Colton says yes and begins describing aspects of heaven that are biblical, such as the multicolored horse that Jesus would ride on the day of his return, and the wounds on Jesus' hands and feet. He also told Colton that everything would be fine and that he had nothing to worry about. Colton later said that the pictures of Jesus they had at home didn't look like him. Now back to his ministry, Todd reveals to the congregation what Colton told him, and soon word spreads throughout the town about Colton's trip to heaven. The family is even interviewed by the local newspaper. Some in town doubted the story, and Cassie is even bullied at school about it. She responds by punching 2 bullies mocking Colton, which Todd later learns but decides not to punish her. Meanwhile, Todd struggles to accept that his son went to heaven and seeks advice from friends and even a psychologist to explain further. The psychologist offers a scientific explanation for what happens when someone is about to die and says that Colton is hallucinating. Sonia also struggles to accept what Colton said. She thinks he put together a number of different stories he had heard throughout his life. Soon after, the church council has a meeting with Todd, led by church organizer Nancy and the church elder and Todd's best friend Jim. They tell him that Colton's story could divide the church and they couldn't accept it. His job could also be in jeopardy if a split occurs. After attending the funeral of a local man who died in a fire, Colton tells his father that he met Pop, Todd's grandfather. Back at home, Todd pulls out a photo of Pop as an old man. Colton says that is not who he saw. No one in heaven is old or wears glasses. Todd later finds an old photo of Pop as a young man without glasses, and Colton says that's the man he saw. Since Colton has never seen a picture of Pop, Todd eventually begins to believe that Colton was not hallucinating what he saw. Later, Colton tells Sonia that he met his other sister in heaven, whom Sonia had miscarried many years ago. He describes her as looking just like Cassie, but a little shorter and has Sonia's hair color. Since neither Sonia nor Todd ever told Colton about her miscarriage, they are now convinced that he has indeed went to heaven. By this time, Colton's story is becoming national news, and Todd is ambushed through a phone call from a radio station asking him on air if Colton's story is true. Todd responds by saying that anyone who wants to know should come to their church next Sunday. But prior to that, Todd goes to the cemetery to put flowers at a grave site. It's the grave of Nancy's son who was killed in Afghanistan several years ago. Nancy sees Todd on the cemetery and they talk. She tells Todd that she is becoming the bitter woman she vowed never to become and isn't mad at Todd, but at God for allowing his son to live and her son to die. Todd tells her that God does not love him any more than he loves her, and there is an absolute reason why God allowed Colton to return. Nancy and Todd then embrace, and she implies that his job is safe. That Sunday, in front of the congregation, Todd tells what the family has gone through since the operation. With the congregation almost in tears, he declares that he without a doubt believes that his son went to heaven. Then Sonia gets up and hugs Todd, followed by their children and the whole congregation. The very last scenes show the Burpos at home. Todd is watching a news report about a girl on the other side of the world who had a similar experience with Colton. This is the younger Lithuanian female from the start of the film, and she painted a portrait of Jesus that doesn't look like any of his pictures. Colton sees the portrait and his jaw drops. Colton confirms that the portrait is the same as the Jesus he saw in heaven. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and turn on notification for more movies like this.